Welcome to Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today. And let's talk about Lies of P. And in particular, let's talk about the bosses of Lies of P. Because just like any great Souls-like game out there, the bosses are a high point of discussion just simply because they are so difficult. And I'm here to tell you, Lies of P does not disappoint. But I thought it might be fun just simply to rank all the bosses from easiest to hardest inside the game. And yes, I did do a cheese video on pretty much all of these bosses. However, in the process of that, I did fight all the bosses regular as well. And so I have a little bit of background as far as the difficulty on them. But let's go ahead and rank all 25 bosses. Coming in last place is going to be the Puppet of the Future, and I must be totally misunderstanding the lore behind this particular boss here, because this is like the exact opposite of Future in every single way. This looks like an ancient robot that was probably the very first robot ever created in this particular world, and maybe that's why it's called the Puppet of the Future, because it like showed the future of what the puppets could end up becoming. I don't know, but regardless, it is insanely easy in this game. The first time you come across it is in like a little acid or poison swamp here, and you can't really fight him too easily. However, you just simply clear the acid out, and you can just simply run up there, get one slice in, back away, and he will never hit you. But even if you don't do that, you can time all of his attacks and pretty much void damage throughout the entire battle. And not only that, you're going to also encounter him 2 more times inside the game, and it just gets easier every single time. I see no other place to put the Puppet of the Future except for last place, because this boss is incredibly telegraphed, incredibly easy, and I can't imagine anyone having trouble with this particular one. And up next is going to be the Mad Donkey, and this is the first of several human-like enemies you're going to fight with just simply a mask of different animals. And to me, he is the easiest one because he is so easy to backstab, because the game is trying to teach you how to backstab enemies and do visceral attacks. And so like the game sets it up perfectly for him to basically make himself vulnerable, go behind him, get the backstab, and you have him taken out in no time. Some of the other human enemies have a little bit more tricks up their sleeves, things like that. The Mad Donkey is just very slow, very telegraphed, and it's almost like a tutorial boss to a degree, and that's why it belongs pretty much at the bottom. And up next is going to be the Black Cat, and truth be told, the Mad Donkey and the Black Cat could almost be interchangeable as far as like difficulty, but I did put the Black Cat one notch above, just simply because his moves are not as telegraphed as the Mad Donkey. Now, he is not very fast. He may be blind at this point when you battle inside the game, according to the lore, and so he can't see you very well. He even says, like, during the boss fight, fighting wears me out, let's just get this over with. And so he's not meant to be a very hard boss, and truth be told, fighting him could be completely avoided inside the game as well. But if you do fight him, it's not going to be a hard battle, and you'll have him defeated pretty darn quick, and it's sort of a sad boss fight. In 22nd place is going to be the Atoned, and the Atoned is definitely a step up from the Black Cat and the Mad Donkey, but still, it's a human fighter that you're going up against, and the melee attacks are pretty predictable. She is a lot faster than the Black Cat and the Mad Donkey as well, but the area is a very open area, and you can sort of bait her out into all kinds of little places you can punish her, as well as just simply get into the trolley cart that's behind her, get her stuck on the wall, and then just take her out by jabbing your sword through the wall, and for a very easy victory. But even if you don't do the cheese, this particular boss is still a very, very easy boss inside the game, and part of that does have to do with the environment that you're fighting her in. It just opens up so many opportunities for you to really get in there and finish the battle quickly. In 21st place, we're going to have the Survivor, and I promise I'm not putting all of the human characters at the bottom of the list. We're going to mix it up here in just a second, but all the ones we mentioned so far, they just really don't belong any higher. But the Survivor is very easy to backstab. The only thing that makes it a little bit more difficult than the Atoned is the idea that you're fighting the entire battle in this one itty bitty room here, and your only saving grace is simply going to be the backstab, and you're also getting positioned around the table and a little corridor over here. So if you get the positioning just right, you can punish the character pretty easily, but it's definitely going to be harder than the Atoned just simply because of the environment, but still, it's going to be toward the lower part of our list. And up next is going to be an actual boss in the game, and not just simply a human character. It's going to be the Parade Master. This is the very first boss you're going to come across, and for new players of this type of genre of games, it's going to be pretty darn intimidating. But for most Souls veterans out there, you're going to know most of the strategies as far as like rolling into the attacks, when to back up, you know, how to get your charge attacks in, and also like visceral attacks and such as that. He does have some pretty cool phases here where he like rips his head off and, you know, starts swinging that around at you. It's a really cool looking boss fight, and it's a great introduction to the game. But at the same time, the Parade Master does have very telegraphed attacks, has many openings for you to really get in there, really punish him, get him staggered, so you can't put him too high on the list. But at the same time, he's so early inside the game, you haven't leveled up very much, you do not have very many throwables, any consumables, stuff like that. And so with all that in consideration, as well as being a learning boss in the game, so 20th place, I feel like that's a pretty good number for the Parade Master. And now we're back to the human bosses once again with the Robber Weasel, and she is definitely going to be harder than the other human bosses just simply because she has the ability to throw items at you. And so if you're going through the game as like a throwable character where you're trying to, you know, use all of your throwables to take out bosses and such as that, she's going to give you a taste of your own medicine for this fight. And so to me, that automatically puts it up just a little bit higher on the list than the other human fighters in the game. Also, her jump attack with the axe, I mean, it can get pretty hectic at some points. And so the Robber Weasel, still not a super hard boss fight, but it's definitely going to be harder than the other human characters that we've talked about so far. In 18th place, we have the Scrapped Watchman. This is our second major boss inside the game, or our second large boss in the game. And for this one, it reminds me a lot of the Dark Beast Parl from Bloodborne, especially with all the lightning attacks, and also the way he sort of moves around, and sort of the, I don't know, the spider-like legs that sort of come down. There's a lot of similarities, at least to me, for this. You can have a summon in this fight, and that does help, but still, there are so many attacks that he can have, you know, if his swipes or if his little electric blast he shoots out. I mean, he's just fairly unpredictable. You can still get in there and, you know, well away when he's attacking your summon and take his HP down quite a bit, but he is definitely going to be harder than the Parade Master. But at the same time, I feel like the game is still in its learning stages for the player, and they're not going to get too difficult too fast. And so I think 18th place, pretty good place for the Scrapped Watchman. And then we have the White Lady, and if nothing else, the intro where she comes bashing down into the ground. Right there, it tells you pretty much how intimidating she's going to be. I don't know a whole lot about the lore of the White Lady, but she is one tough boss fight as far as like a one-on-one melee attack. There are several spots where you can sort of get her stuck, or, you know, where you get a backstab in when she's trying to jump away. But for the most part, if you don't get her sort of pinned up against one of the little obstacles here, she can be a pretty tough fight and moves pretty quickly on you as far as like getting you comboed a little bit. And so the White Lady, definitely not one of the hardest boss fights in the game, but as far as like a midpoint boss, I feel like she does pretty good. And next up, I'm going to put the Mad Clown Puppet, and I know some people out there would put this boss way higher on the list, but to me, he is so easy to telegraph and so easy to get trapped and so easy to basically cheese. Like, I don't understand why anybody would actually have trouble with this boss, because especially if you're using throwables, you can just simply stand back and just simply walk to the left, walk to the right, throw an item out there, and you have him defeated in just a matter of like a minute. Also, if you don't do that, you can get him sort of telegraphed and trapped by getting him to do a move, run up there, take a few slices, back up, especially if you can like stuck behind some of the little garden terraces and whatnot. There are just so many ways you can use the environment or your distance to take this character out. I don't understand why people are putting him so much higher on the list, unless you're just simply always fighting him one-on-one, close combat melee, trying to block all of his attacks or to get like a perfect guard on him. Maybe they're hard for that, but if you're not doing that and you just simply want to take the boss out, you can make pretty quick work of the Mad Puppet if you just simply use pretty much what the game gives you. And up next is going to be the Owl Doctor, and sort of like the Robber Weasel, this character has a throwables that he can throw at you as far like little knives, can jump halfway across the arena and really close the gap in no time. And the Owl Doctor is just sort of a tough to predict boss. It's like everything I disliked about the Robber Weasel taken to a secondary degree to make it just a little bit more difficult to the player. And so a little bit more difficult to the player. He's still one of the human players, so he's not going to make it super high on the list, but just simply because of his ability to close that gap, be unpredictable, and have those throwables, he's just a little bit higher than some of the other ones. And let's go ahead and knock out one more human character before we get into some of the major bosses here. And that's going to be the Red Fox. Now the Red Fox is going to be the fastest of all the summons. It's going to be the last one that you fight in the actual game itself. However, even though it can like really get you stuck in one of those combo attacks and just like really well at you and almost pretty much kill you in one swift little combo here. He is so easy to simply get around the combo, and you can simply backstab him, or you can just simply run away down the corridor here, and you can bait him out into the elevator and have him taken out in no time, or just simply follow behind him as he's walking back up the little stairway here, and you can take him out that way pretty easily as well. And so there's so many easy ways to cheese this particular character, but even if you want to fight him normally, you can dodge around this little combo attack here, and you'll have him defeated pretty quickly. None of the human boss characters are going to be like super difficult in the game, but Red Fox, I feel like they give him enough tricks up his sleeve here that at least for the first couple tries, he can trick you pretty easily into some of these combos and actually take you out and kill you. In 13th place, we have Champion Victor, and this is a WWE character if I've ever seen one. Almost a mixture of like WWE and Bane from Batman to a degree. He packs an incredible punch on him, and with a two-stage fight where he actually gets stronger and faster in the second phase, he can be a little bit on the tough side, but still, you do have a Spectre you can take into this battle with you, and just simply get him distracted on the Spectre, and you can wail away at him from the backside and just simply dodge away until he goes back after the Spectre. But even if you go in there without any help, you can still predict a lot of moves that he's going to do, and even though they're very powerful, if you get stuck in them, if you predict them, you can dodge out of them and get him punished. And he's not too bad of a boss fight. He's nowhere near as intimidating as he might look, but still, he belongs in the upper half of the list. In 12th place, we are going to have the final of the 101 melee human characters. This is going to be the Walker of Illusions. And I guess I really shouldn't call this a human character, because it almost looks like more than one of the characters out of Bloodborne in the DLC when you're getting ready to go up to tower and fight against Lady Maria in the Ivory Clock Tower. That's what it's called, the Clock Tower. But regardless, this particular character here, she is able to split herself into two separate parts, which obviously complicates the battle a good bit, but you can just simply continue to focus on the main character, get her staggered, and then the other one just simply disappears. Or you can just simply take out the duplicate and then focus back on the main character. She is very fast, and you are fighting a very, very small corridor here, and so combine the effects of small area, fast character, duplicate character, of the human characters, or the quote-quote human characters, the Walker of Illusions is definitely the hardest of all of those, and almost makes it into the top 10. I feel like 12th place is a good spot for her. Now in 11th place, I put the Door Guardian because this is very much of a gimmick boss fight as far as like just simply having to chop away at the leg here until he falls down. Sort of like the Tower Knight was in Demon Souls. However, like he's still a very, very meaty boss as far as like his HP bar goes. Has some really powerful attacks. And unless you bait those attacks out or try to like telegraph it a little bit, he can be a pretty damaging boss. And an entire run of perfection where you're like almost about to win the battle could all be ended in one swift blow. And even though he's not like super difficult, a lot of your normal tried and true strategies aren't going to work really well with him. And the unpredictability of being able to die at almost a moment's notice because of his power can also get pretty darn annoying. And so I feel like 11th place is a good positioning for him. Definitely not in the top 10, but at the same time, the frustration level puts him pretty high on the list. And now we're finally into the top 10, and so these are the bosses that are definitely going to be the top tier inside the game. And in 10th place, we're going to go up to King's Flame, Fuoco, and this boss here is probably the first really difficult one that you're going to actually encounter inside the game. As far as like one you're going to have to really learn pretty much all of the attacks on, actually figure out how to like telegraph and sort of bait out certain attacks, especially like the flame attack, like when to run away, when he's just simply, you know, looks like he's urinating all over the floor here for his flame attack. And he just has a large variety of attacks he can do on you at the same time. However, the boss arena is really huge here, and it gives you plenty of time to actually go through and try to learn his different attacks, how to bait certain ones out. There's one he does where he just sort of stands back and sort of starts charging at you like a train. Man, you can bait that attack out, and like if you just simply bait that one attack out, if you're patient enough, you can pretty much win the boss fight with that one attack. But at the same time, until you learn multiple attacks of how to bait certain ones out, he is really, really difficult, and he's definitely very much of an increase in difficulty compared to what you've encountered thus far inside the game. And so I think a lot of players are going to get really, really frustrated at the King's Flame, and so I think 10th place is a pretty good spot for him. In ninth place, I'm putting Romeo, King of Puppets, and there are two phases of this particular boss fight. In part one, when he's in his giant puppet suit here, he's not that bad. Truth be told, if you have your Spectre out, you can just sort of get him distracted on the Spectre, well away at him from behind, and he's not very hard, very slow, and pretty able to telegraph the majority of his attacks. However, when he comes out of his giant puppet suit, Romeo is very much akin to like Lady Maria in Bloodborne, especially in part 2 of phase 2. Romeo is insanely fast here, and unless you have a summon that's still alive, my gosh, you pretty much have to be ready to dodge everything that's coming at you, and it's going to be very difficult to actually get your perfect guards out here. And so phase 2 of the King of Puppets, or part 2 of phase 2 rather, holy cow, extraordinarily difficult, and would be higher on the list if it was just simply this particular phase. But since it only lasts like a quarter of the fight, I feel like that makes the majority of the boss fight pretty easy, and so therefore we can't really put it in the top 5 or anything like that. And so I feel like ninth place is pretty good for the Romeo King of Puppets. Next up, we have the Corrupted Parade Master, and this is sort of the hyped up or more difficult version of the very first boss inside the game. And I personally love the idea of bringing back the tutorial boss or the very first boss and having you fight him again later on. Now that he's corrupted, now that he's got the decay on him. I mean, I really feel like it's a cool boss fight. And I also really love that the moves are similar, but they're not the same. And so you have to like sort of learn the boss fight again, even though it seems familiar. In phase 2 of this boss fight, when he begins to sort of like throw up or vomit these little creatures out here that are also going to come at you, that just makes the boss fight even more intense. However, there are some moves that are very, very punishable in this, especially like when he flops down and sort of starts waving his hands at you and sort of crawling at you a little bit. You can really sort of telegraph that as far as just simply counting the number of times he's going to slam down. But until you figure that out, he can be fairly difficult just because there's so many new moves to learn, relearn from the old fight, and all these little minions inside the arena at the same time. He can be pretty difficult, but like I said, there are some moves you can definitely bait out here, definitely punish, and he's also not really that fast for a boss fight. And so 8th place is where the Corrupted Parade Master is going to fall. In 7th place, I'm going to put the Fallen Archbishop Andreas. And as far as like new players of this genre, when they get to this boss fight, this is where some of them are going to sort of fall out of the game, just because this boss fight is very, very difficult. And there are two very distinct stages for this boss fight. And the first stage, hard enough, but the second stage where the actual Archbishop comes out of the back, man, this is like a very intense fight, especially so early in the game when you don't have the opportunity to really farm a whole lot, and you don't have the opportunity to, purchase a lot of throwables or anything like that. This is going to be a very difficult fight where you have to pretty much learn the battle, and the only way to learn it is just simply by fighting the battle. And since there are 2 stages, you have to go through stage 1 every time to get to stage 2, and then you have to learn to fight for stage 2, which is like totally different than stage 1. And it's just a difficult boss fight in general. A very cool looking boss fight, one of the most unique designs in the game. I love the way this boss looks. And in some games, a boss like this might even be the most difficult boss for the game. But trust me, it's going to get much, much harder from here. In 6th place, I'm putting the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, and this is the second time that you're going to fight the Brotherhood here. And to me, this is easier than the first time, because in this one you're going to take on all of the younger siblings first, and then once you kill all of them, then the eldest is going to come out. And yes, you do have to sort of time the killing of them right, otherwise the eldest will come out too early. But if you time it right, the eldest will come out and you fight him one-on-one. And since the area is so large here, he's very easy to dodge. It's very easy to find different locations that you can sort of, telegraph which moves you want him to do and punish him pretty easily. And also your Spectre seems to last a lot longer in this particular battle. And you can also get way more backstabs in on the younger siblings while your Spectre is there. And so even though this boss fight is very difficult and the Brotherhood is very, very punishing, especially when it's just you against the eldest, I also feel like the way the fight is laid out here, that there are so many advantages to help you through that fight that it's going to be the easier of the 2 Brotherhood fights. And speaking of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, in 5th place is going to be the eldest of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. Even though it's the first time you're going to encounter them, to me it is harder than the second time that you end up fighting them. And that's just simply because you get overloaded so fast while still fighting the eldest. Because you start off with the eldest, and every time you get about a quarter of the health gone, another member appears. So you get one more youngest, and then another youngest, and then the final youngest all while still fighting off the eldest, who is still the most powerful. And so you get overloaded very fast in this particular boss fight. And also, there's nowhere to hide. You know, there's no rocks to hide behind to get a little bit of a barrier. You're just all out in the open the whole time. And it's just very easy to get overloaded. And to me, definitely harder than when you encounter them later in the game. In fourth place, I have the green monster of the swamp / the puppet devouring green monster, and this looks like something like straight out of Bloodborne. The landscape out of Bloodborne, the boss battle itself out of Bloodborne, everything is just Bloodborne-esque in this arena here. Now, the green monster himself is a difficult boss fight. I mean, you're going to go up there, you're fighting this giant monster of the swamp here. If you get in close, he spews out on you, and of course that's going to weaken you in the long run as well. If you stay too far away from him, he's going to end up charging you, trying to attack you that way. And so there's so many attacks he can do to you, whether you're close or far away. It's just difficult to sort of telegraph the fight. But when you finally do get stage 1 done, he's going to come out of the back, and then you have the puppet devouring green monster. And once again, as awesome as he looks, he is incredibly difficult. You can have your summon out here, and the summon does help a lot, but your summon also tends to die very quickly in this fight. I've not played this particular boss since they've patched the game, so he may be a little bit easier than when I went through the game, but holy cow, this boss here lives up to his imagery, lives up to the environment, and really brings you back to the hardest parts of Bloodborne. In third place, I'm going to put Simon Manus, the Awakened God. And originally, I would have put this boss as probably second place. However, they really nerfed this one with the patch significantly to knock him down all the way from second place to third place, which I know doesn't sound like a lot because he's still like in the top 3 here, but trust me, he was much more difficult before the nerf. Stage 1 of Simon Manus is really nothing to worry about for this. His attacks are pretty predictable. You can dodge around him, get behind him, slice away. Really a piece of cake boss. Honestly, one of the easiest like in the game to me. But stage 2 of Simon Manus, he has so many shots that can like nearly one-shot kill you. He reminds me a little bit of the Elden Beast. He has like these little stars that come down and sort of circle around the arena and then just start shooting down at you, basically killing you almost on the spot. He also has another one like the Hand of God, like comes down to the middle of the arena. If you're anywhere near that, it's a one-shot kill. And while he's trying to attack you with all of these distance attacks, he also like just randomly jumps at you and then attacks you with melee at the same time. And so he is a very difficult boss fight. But before the nerf, a lot of these attacks did way more damage. But now they have nerfed him, you can actually take some of these hits and continue on the fight here. And you also get a summon in this fight. And if you bring the summon in and the summon lasts all the way through stage 2, you can actually have him defeated pretty easily. Just simply depend on your summon and keep dodging the attacks until he goes back to your summon and then really unload on him from there. And so Simon Manus would have put him as number 2, but in the current state of the game, number 3. In second place, I am going to put Laxasia the Complete, and this is a really cool boss fight, and it feels like something like From Software would have created on their own. In the first stage here, Laxasia, she has all of her armor on, and the armor has a really cool mechanic about it. The back part of the armor, you actually can't attack her because you just simply bounce off, but the more times you hit her in the back plate will actually fall off, and then you can attack her from behind. If you have a summon in there with you, this makes the battle so much easier. But I just love the mechanic, like you originally can attack there, but if you weaken the armor enough, you can attack there. And I don't know, there's something about that just, I don't know, I really enjoy for it. But stage 1, difficult. But stage 2, when she comes out of her armor, she can fly in the sky, she can shoot lightning balls at you. And like, my gosh, like this is a difficult boss fight. If you perfect guard, you can reflect all the lightning balls back to her. And you can use a perfect grindstone to really help with that. But if you don't do that, and you have to depend on dodging these lightning balls, like, good luck. Like, it's almost impossible to get out of the way of them. But then when she comes down, she bashes down into you, and the attacks are extraordinarily fast. It's like the Romeo fight, but just more difficult and more quick. And if your summon's not alive, man, you better be ready to dodge pretty much endlessly. And so Laxasia, to me, very reminiscent of actual From Software, and probably some of the best design inside the game. Just a really fun boss fight, but at the same time, even though it's fun, it's very difficult. And in first place, we have the final boss in the game, the Nameless Puppet. Now, this is an optional boss, and you can finish the game off with Simon Manus and be done, get the credits to roll. But if you choose the ending correctly, you get to fight the Nameless Puppet. And my gosh, this is one of the hardest bosses I've ever played in a Souls-like game. There ain't no telling how many times I went through this particular boss fight just simply trying to beat him. Now stage 1 can be a little bit deceiving because it seems more like a one-on-one melee fight with really nothing special about it, just simply a pretty talented fighter. And if you use your Aegis shield, you really work with some of the mechanics that the game has given you, you can take the stage 1 out pretty quickly once you've really sort of gone through the boss fight enough. But stage 2, my lord, this is one of the fastest bosses I've ever seen as far as like being able to close the gap pretty much across the entire arena on you, fly up in the air, come crashing down on you, and just attacks that just seemingly never end. And also some of the attacks seem to like start up the same way as other attacks, and so you think you're going to telegraph it, but now it turns out to be a different one, and then you end up dying from that particular attack. And there are some ways you can try to predict certain moves, like when she flies up in the air, you can sort of roll under that, and you can get a good little slice in there, or you can try to figure out like when an attack comes to a close, but you really have to go through this boss fight multiple times before you can try to figure out and sort of piece together where you can get in there, where's a weak moment, and where you can sort of sneak an attack in. And I know there's some people out there who can probably like perfect guard the entire thing and are great at parrying and all of that. That's not me. And so for me, the Nameless Puppet was a very, very hard boss fight to actually telegraph and actually beat inside the game. And to say the heart was racing would be an understatement because this boss fight, it really gets you going. But to me, it was a perfect finish to a nearly perfect game. But what do you all think? Do you think the Nameless Puppet is the hardest boss in the game? Who would you put at the top? Who would you put at the bottom? Let me know what you think I got wrong in the comments down below. Once again, this list is just simply my opinion going through the game. I've not polled an audience or anything like that. This is just simply my individual playthrough. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.